Okay, it's recording.
Hi everybody, I am Dr. Pamela Thomas and we're going to talk about added titles, but wait, there's more. This was originally supposed to be in November, but our offices were closed, so we moved everything up a month. So we're going to cover added titles, which are recorded in MARC fields 246 and the 7XX fields. We're going to talk about variant titles, uniform titles, analytical titles, portion of title, at head of title, alternate forms of titles, cover titles, spine titles, acronym titles, parallel titles, and typographical errors in titles. There are other types of titles, but these are some of the more common types of titles that you catalog in your daily life. Okay, so let's first talk about varying titles. So the varying forms of title associated with the item, whether or not the title is on the item, use field 246 if a title differs substantially from the title statement in field 245, and if it contributes to further identification of the item. Also use field 246 for tracing a portion of the title, and that is all from the OCLC Bibliographic Formats and Standards website. So if you look at our first example, we have The Running of the Bulls, and then the subtitle is An Adrenaline Rush. So there's no need to create a 246 for the subtitle. The second one, we have The Running of the Bulls, and then our subtitle is Jacob Riley's Memoir. So we're going to trace a portion of the title in the 246-30. So we've got Jacob Riley's Memoir. And then the next example, we have Curiosities and Wonderments, and then the subtitle is The Wonderful Treasures Found at Ripley's Believe It or Not. So we're going to have a 246 first indicator 3, second indicator blank, Curiosities and Wonderments, and that's an alternate form of title. Notice that we spelled out the ampersand, so we have the word AND instead of the ampersand. And then the second one, we have a 246 first indicator 3, second indicator 0, Wonderful Treasures Found at Ripley's Believe It or Not. And again, that's tracing a portion of the title. Okay, so we're still talking about varying titles. And all this information is again from OCLC Bibliographic Formats and Standards. Remember that an analytical title is part of the title. So they tell you to do not enter initial articles in subfield A, do not enter punctuation at the end of the field unless the last word in the field is an abbreviation, letter, or data that ends with a mark of punctuation. For items including several works but lacking a collective title, field 246 is used only for titles related to the title selected as the title proper, usually the first work named in the chief source of information. Titles related to other works are recorded in field 740, which is access point, uncontrolled related analytical title, or one of the other 7XX fields for access point fields, and then use separate 246 fields for each varying form of title. Let's talk about the indicators next. So we've got 246 first indicator. So if the first indicator is 0, that means it's a note, no added entry. If it's a 1, it's a note, added entry. If it's a 2, it's no note and no added entry. And if it's a 3, it's no note, added entry. So the first indicator is telling us whether there's a note and or an added entry. So for the 0, for the note, no added entry, you're going to use if the variant title is needed to display as a note, but not as a title access point. And the first indicator value 0 is used infrequently in field 246. They prefer you to use the value 1. So they want you to use that note added entry 1. So if you have first indicator 1, note added entry, use if the variant title is needed to display as a note and as a title access point. Used primarily for variant titles appearing on the item that are not part of the data recorded in field 245. Okay, so for the first indicator 2, no note, no added entry, use if the variant title is not needed to display as a note or a title access point. First indicator value 2 is unlikely to be used in field 246. Prefer use of value 3. So value 3 is no note added entry. Use if the variant title is not needed to display as a note, but is needed as a title access point. Use primarily for variant titles which already appear in field 245, such as alternative titles, other title information, parallel titles, parts of the title proper, and variant forms of the title made to spell out abbreviations, correct typographical errors, or provide alternative forms of numbers. In other words, numerals versus spelled out forms. And again, this is all from OCLC Bibliographic Formats and Standards, and we're going to cover some of these examples next. But first, we're going to go, to 246 second indicator. So as you can see, the second indicator of the 246 field is for the type of title. So if the second indicator is blank, that means there's no type specified. If it's a 0, that's the portion of title. If it's a 1, it's a parallel title. If it's a 2, it's a distinctive title. If it's 3, it's other title. If it's a 4, it's a cover title. If it's 5, it's added title page title. If it's a 6, it's caption title. If it's 7, it's a running title. And if it's 8, it's a spine title. Okay, so let's move on to portion of title. So any portion of the full title, except parallel titles, is required for an access point should be recorded in the 246 field. There's no need to create a 5XX note for the portion of title. Use a 245, both indicators 0, for the main title, and the portion of the title goes in the 246.30 field. Again, that's from OCLC Bibliographic Formats and Standards. So let's look at our first example. We have a 245.00 Harvard Law School's Paralegal Index. So we're going to create a 246.30 of Paralegal Index. Our second example, we have a 245.00 Illinois State University Circus Performers, 1970 to 2018. So we're going to create a 246.30 Circus Performers, 1970 to 2018. And then our third example, we have a 245.00 Annual Report 2015 Crime Reports of Peoria County, Illinois. So we're going to create a 246.30 Crime Reports of Peoria County, Illinois. Okay. So we're going to talk about at head of title. So if the issuing body appears before the title and has been transcribed as a statement of responsibility, and the user might consider the title to begin with the issuing body due to the typography and spacing, field 246 may be given for the body and title, which are the first two examples, and we'll go over those in a minute. For phrases not representing standalone titles, use a general note, see the last example. And a similar situation occurs when a word or phrase appears above the title that has been rejected from the title proper, or when introductory words are omitted from the title. To provide access to the title, beginning with these words, given at head of title 500 note and a 246 field, combining the word or phrase with the title proper. If the phrase can stand on its own, a 246 field with a subfield I is sufficient. For national pharmacy codes, the word national cannot stand alone, so a note is needed. So let's look at our examples. So the first one, we have a 245.00 metadata guidelines. And then we have a 246 first indicator 1, second indicator blank. And then we have our subfield I at head of title, and then a colon space subfield A, Illinois Digital Archives. For our second example, we have a 245.04. We have the life of a barista. And then for our 246 first indicator 1, second indicator blank, subfield I at head of title, colon space subfield A, Starbucks. And then our last example, we have a 245.10. We have pharmacy codes. And then our 246 first indicator 3, second indicator blank, subfield A, national pharmacy codes. And then we're going to have a 500 and both indicators blank, subfield A at head of title, comma, space, national. And just for your information, most of the examples in this presentation are created by me. Some of them are real though, and I'll let you figure out which ones are real and which ones are fake. Okay, so let's move on to alternate forms of title. So providing alternate forms of the title will improve accessibility for your patrons. For titles that contain an alternate title, such as hurricanes, or tropical cyclones, give a 246 field for the alternate title, tropical cyclones, and also for the portion of the title proper that precedes the word or, which in this case is hurricanes, when this portion consists of less than 5 words. This provides the necessary access for a user who might not think to include the word or and their alternate title in the search. And that information is from Cataloger's reference shelf. The portion consisting of less than 5 words was confirmed as a valid guideline with OCLC in October 2018. So let's look at our examples. So we have a 245.00, and then subfield A, we have 13 tales of suspense, with 13 being the numeral 13. So we're going to create a 246, first indicator 3, second indicator blank, subfield A, 13, we're writing that out as a word, tales of suspense. And then our second example, we have a 245, both indicators 0, subfield A, and we have a copyright symbol, at your library. So we're going to create a 246, first indicator 3, second indicator blank, subfield A, copyright at your library. And we're writing that out as a word. For the third example, we have a 245.13, subfield A, an umbrella, ampersand, a monkey. So we're going to create a 246.3 with the second indicator blank, subfield A, umbrella, and a monkey. So we're turning that ampersand into a word. And then our final example, we have the 245.10, hurricanes, or tropical cyclones. So remember, I had explained that since it's less than 5 words, we have to do 2 246s for this. So the first 246 is a 30, and again, subfield A, tropical cyclones, and then a 246.20, we're doing hurricanes. So for those of you who had not heard about the 5 words or less rule, like myself, we need to start paying attention, I guess, to how many words are in a title that are formatted in that way. So, fun times. Always learning something new, right? Okay, so let's move on to cover titles. So titles printed on the original covers of a publication or lettered or stamped on the publisher's binding, as distinguished from the title lettered on the cover by a bindery. To generate the display constant cover title, you need to use a second indicator value 4. Again, that's from OCLC Bibliographic Formats and Standards. A title printed on the cover of an item as issued. Give a variant title for a title given on the original cover of the serial as supplied by the publisher that differs in a significant way from the title given on the chief source. Note, in order to use cover title, which would be a 246.14, the cover must not be the source of the title proper. Do not confuse the variant form cover title with the title from cover. Note that is used when the cover is selected as the chief source because there is no title page. And that's from the Cataloger's reference shelf. In the 245 field, put the title that appears on the title page, and in the 246 field, put the title that appears on the cover of the publication. For all the examples provided, the titles in the 245 fields appeared on the title page, and the titles in the 246 fields were the titles on the covers of the publication. So let's look at our examples. So the first one, we have a 245.00, subfield A, annual list of taxpayers from Peoria County. And then we have a 246.14, subfield A, Peoria County taxpayers list. Our second example, we have a 245.00, subfield A, monthly account of cable bill charges, March 2016. And so we're going to create a 246.14, subfield A, cable bill charges, March 2016. In our third example, we have a 245.00, subfield A, John Mellencamp's life story. And then a 246.14, subfield A, pink houses. This title only appears on the cover, not on the title page. And then our last example, we have a 245.10, Kentucky State Publications, and then we're going to create a 246.14, subfield A, State Publications. Okay, so let's look at cover title pack view. So for publications of the state of Illinois, which is the title statement, the cover title is State of Illinois Publications. Okay, I'll just let you look at that for a second. Okay, so now let's look at the MARC view. So you'll notice the 246.14 State of Illinois publication shows that there is a note added entry. We know this because the first indicator is a 1, and that this is a cover title, and we know that because the second indicator is a 4. Now the 246.17 state publication shows that there is a note added entry, first indicator 1, and that this is a running title, second indicator 2. So the titles repeated in the top or bottom margin of each page or every other page in a publication. So that's from OCLC Bibliographic Formats and Standards as well. So, okay, so let's move on to spine titles. So what is a spine title? It's the titles on the spine, the publisher's title, not library binder's title. The spine title is often a short or partial form of the full title given on the title page. And that's from OCLC Bibliographic Formats and Standards. For the first example, the Chart Book of Federal Programs in Aging, that's what appeared on the spine. And then the 246.3, the 3 as the first indicator means that there is no note added entry, and the blank means that there is no type of title specified. The 246.18, the first indicator 1, means that there is a note added entry, and the 8 as the second indicator means that it is a spine title. The 222 is the key title. ISSN National Centers use field 222 for a unique title assigned to a continuing resource, serial or integrating resource, in conjunction with an international standard serial number in field 022. The title is formed from the title information transcribed from a piece of the continuing resource and is constructed with qualifiers to make it unique when necessary. National centers assign ISSNs and key titles. You may enter the ISSN and key title if you are inputting a new record and the ISSN and key title are clearly labeled on the item. If you are inputting a record for a microform or a photocopy reproduction, you may transfer the ISSN and key title from the record for the original item to the record for the reproduction. For punctuation, you need to omit final punctuation unless the last word in the field is an abbreviation or ends with a closing parenthesis. And that's from Bib Formats and Standards again. So for the second example, we've got Discover America's Great River Road. That was what was on the spine. So in the 246.18, we have America's Great River Road, which appeared on the spine, and the first indicator 1 means that there is a note added entry, and the 8 as the second indicator means that this is a spine title. The 246.30, the first indicator 3, means that there is no note added entry, and the 0 as the second indicator means that this is a portion of the title, which it is. The last 246.1, the first indicator 1, means that there's a note added entry, and the blank as the second indicator means that there is no type of title specified. Okay, so let's move on to acronym titles. For acronyms, you need to record the full name in the 245 and the acronym in 246.1, second indicator blank, prefaced by subfield I, also known as, and then the acronym should be in subfield A. So let's look at our examples. So in the first one, we have a 245.10, and then we've got resource description and access in subfield A. So we're going to create a 246, first indicator 1, second indicator blank, subfield I, also known as colon space subfield A, RDA. In the second example, we have 245.10, subfield A, extensible markup language, and then we're going to create a 246.1, second indicator blank, subfield I, also known as colon space subfield A, XML. In our third example, we have a 245.10, and then subfield A, functional requirements for bibliographic records, and then a 246.1, second indicator blank, subfield I, also known as colon space subfield A, FRBR, or Ferber. And then our last example, we have a 245.10, subfield A, Library of Congress Rule Interpretations, and then a 246.1, second indicator blank, subfield I, also known as colon space subfield A, LCRI. Okay, let's move on to parallel titles. So parallel titles are titles in another language. You use them to create an added access point for a parallel title in field 245. Use a separate 246 field for each parallel title. If a title page has titles in 2 or more languages, use field 245 for the full title, title proper, and parallel titles. Use field 245 subfield A for the first title, and field 245 subfield B for all parallel titles, which if you look at the last example, that will show you how to do that. And the last example is in Spanish, French, German, and English. So let's look at our first example. We have a 245.10 in subfield A. Enseigner et apprendre le français à travers des histoires. And then we have the equal sign and the space before and after, and then subfield B, teaching and learning French through storytelling. So we're going to create a 246.31 in subfield A, teaching and learning French through storytelling. So we've got the English translation in that subfield A. So our second example, we have a 245.10, Lern Deutsch in Wogen. Sorry for anybody who speaks German. I don't. We're going to do the space, equal sign space, subfield B, learn German in 6 weeks. And then a 246.31, subfield A, learn German in 6 weeks. So our last example, we have a 245.10, subfield A, inclinando en los molinos de viento, space, equal sign space, subfield B, inclinaison au moulin avant, space, equal sign space, bei Windmühlen kippen, space, equal sign space, tilting at windmills. So we need to create 246.31s for those last 3, and I will not torture your ears by doing the 4 languages, but so the last 246.31 is tilting at windmills. And you guys can all practice your French and German on your own. Okay, so let's go to typographical errors. So typographical errors, incorrect wording, etc. You're going to use field 246 for title access points to correct typographical errors, incorrect wording, etc. occurring in the title proper, and that's from OCLC Bibliographic Formats and Standards. And as we know, sometimes publishers and/or printers make mistakes on the title page. When that happens, catalogers need to create a 246 field with the corrected title. So let's look at our first example. We have a 245.10, subfield A, drug resistance, and notice that resistance is spelled incorrectly. And then we have space, colon, space, subfield B, solving the pharmaceutical crisis. So we're going to create that 246.1, second indicator blank, subfield I, title should read, colon, space, subfield A, drug resistance. We're going to spell resistance correctly this time. For our second example, we have a 245.10, subfield A, correcting common grammatical mistakes, and notice that correcting is not spelled correctly. So we're going to create a 246.1, second indicator blank, subfield I, title should read, colon, space, subfield A, correcting common grammatical mistakes. And then our last example, we have a 245.10, subfield A, smartphone, and notice navigation is spelled incorrectly. Space, colon, space, subfield B, time-saving tips. So we're going to create a 246.1, second indicator blank, title I, subfield I, title should read, colon, space, subfield A, smartphone navigation. I'm going to spell navigation correctly. Okay. All right. So we're going to talk about lacking a collective title, and I'm sure that some of you have run into this probably more than once. So this screenshot shows a pack view. This item includes 3 novels by Charles Dickens. Since Oliver Twist is the first work named, then it becomes the title proper. A 74002 means that there are no non-filing characters. First indicator 0 and second indicator 2 means that these titles are analytical title entries, part of the title. The other 2 titles are in 712. Indicator 1 is for the surname Dickens, and second indicator 2 is for the analytical work. Great Expectations and Tale of Two Cities. For A Tale of Two Cities, the A is not included in subfield T of the 700 field. Okay. So, so the title is Oliver Twist, and Then it's got space, a semicolon space, Great Expectations, space, semicolon space, A Tale of Two Cities. So then you've got your 712 container of work, Dickens Charles, with his dates, and then Great Expectations and subfield T. And then you have the same thing, except for in the second example, you've got subfield T, Tale of Two Cities. And then you've got two 740.02s with those two titles. So you've got Great Expectations and then Tale of Two Cities. Okay. All right. So let's look at uniform title. So this is Little Red. And Little Red is an adaptation of Little Red Riding Hood. So the 730 second indicator blank documents the adaptation. Specific phrases are used in subfield I in the 7XX fields and can be found in the RDA toolkit. According to OCLC bibliographic formats and standards, prefer terms taken from a controlled vocabulary such as RDA Appendix J, which will probably change after the beta toolkit is approved, but there will still be terms that you can find in the new one. So in your 245, you've got Little Red in subfield A, and then in your 730 second indicator blank, you've got subfield I, adaptation of, and then expression in parentheses, and then a colon, and then a space, subfield A, Little Red Riding Hood, and a period, and then subfield L for English, for the language. And notice there's a period after English as well. Okay. All right, so here is another uniform title. Aladdin has three 730 fields. The first 730 is documenting the title of the original work. So that is the Aladdin motion picture. The other 730s are documenting the expression in both French and Spanish, since this video recording is available in Spanish or French subtitles. And notice that the title of the motion picture is in subfield A in all three 730s, and the language is documented in subfield L in the last two 730s. So you've got French in the first one and Spanish in the second one. And then in your 245, you just have Aladdin. Okay. So let's talk about analytical titles. So a 740 is an added entry for uncontrolled related titles and uncontrolled analytical titles. An uncontrolled title is a title not controlled through an authority file or another bibliographic record. Use field 740 for the title portion of a related work that would normally be entered under a name, title, heading, and catalog entry form. In records for collections lacking a collective title, use field 740 also for titles recorded in field 245 subsequent to the first title, and that's from bib formats and standards. So for Arabian Nights, there's a 505 contents note giving us the three titles. So we've got disc 1, the restless one, we've got disc 2, the desolate one, and disc 3, the enchanted one. So those are also documented in the 730 and the 740 fields. So you notice the first 730, you've got those in Portuguese or Spanish. And then in the 740s, you've got the English version. So you've got Restless One, Desolate One, and Enchanted One in the 740s. So since this item is based on the original work Arabian Nights, 730 was created. Notice the use of the subfield I based on and then work enclosed in parentheses, which is how RDA documents information. From the 546, we see that this video is in Portuguese and English. So we have the 730.02 fields with the Portuguese titles, and the titles in English are in the 740.02 fields. In the 730 field, the first indicator 0 means that there are no non-filing characters, a, an, or the, and the second indicator blank means that no information has been provided for the added entry. The 2 as a second indicator means that this is an analytical entry, or part of the title, and a 740 means that the title does not begin with any initial articles, again, a, an, or the, and the 2 as a second indicator means that this is an analytical entry, again, part of the title. And that's from OCLC Bib Formats and Standards. And notice at the beginning of each 730 field, you see the phrase container of work in subfield I. Again, this is how the information is documented using RDA guidelines. For the 740 field, OCLC Bibliographic Formats and Standards recommends current practice is to enter the title without articles and use the first indicator value 0. And that's what was done here. Okay, so these are just some of the resources I used to create this presentation. OCLC Bibliographic Formats and Standards, and then MARC 21, 246 variant format title, and then the 246 variant title and examples from Yale University. They've got a lot more examples on their website. I really like to use their website, so if you have time, you can go check that out. And then also the Catalogers Reference Shelf, 7.2 types of variant titles. So this is all of us from CMC and IHLS that are on the call today. So thank you for attending, and now I will answer any questions that you have about added titles. And after that, you can ask questions about any general cataloging topics. And you can either unmute yourself or just chat a question in the chat box. And I'm creating a schedule of topics to cover next year. So if you guys have any topics that you would like us to cover, then please type those in the chat box as well.
There's a question from B. Hansen. How do we determine when a 245 subfield subfield requires a 246 variant title?
Okay. Let's go back if we can. Oh my goodness, okay. Hang on. Okay. Okay, so this tells you that, let's go back to the, what did we say? Okay, so you're supposed to use the field 246 if a title differs substantially from the title statement in field 245, and if it contributes to further identification of the item. And you can also use the 246 for tracing a portion of the title. So
I think it's mostly if you think someone
would search for that.
Might think that that is the actual title and would search for it too, you know.
Okay. And or use cataloger's judgment.
Yeah. True.
Right.
Okay, we have another question from R. Brady. Do you need both in bib record 700 first indicator 1, second indicator 2, subfield I, container of work, Dickens, Charles, then with the subfield A, Tale of Two Cities, and a 740, first indicator 2, first indicator 0, second indicator 2, Tale of Two Cities. Also, how about when you have an enhanced 505 with multiple titles and authors? You may need 700 first indicator 1, second indicator 2, container of work for each author title, but is a 740 first indicator, second indicator 2 needed? It's a long question, Robert.
Yes, Robert. Yeah, I think you do need both. How do you like that for a short answer for a really long question? And
I think it also depends on how your database indexes different things also, you know, like if the 505 indexes the titles differently than in the 700 or the 740.
Yeah, where it's pulling the information from for searching.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But of course, patrons aren't going to know that.
True, but I mean, catalogers maybe will.
Yeah, you should. But yeah, I think you should. I think you should do both. And Yeah.
Okay, another question from T. Thompson. I'm sorry, I was unsure about the alternate forms of Title 246, first indicator 2, second indicator 0, hurricanes, and why 246, first indicator 2, second indicator 0, not first indicator 3, second indicator 0. And I had that same question, but I'm assuming that you got that information from bib formats?
That was from Kellogg's reference shelf,
Oh.
yes. And I asked OCLC about that, and they said that that was correct. So
First indicator 2, second indicator 0 was correct.
yes.
Interesting.
Yes. This whole thing started, some good discussion amongst some of us.
I think it was, yeah, we all kind of questioned that one.
We did. That's why I
example.
contacted OCLC, because I'm like, what?
But the 246 first indicator 2 says no note,
Right.
no added entry. So
because you already have it in the 245.10.
Right, it's already searching in the 245 under hurricanes, so it doesn't really need to be accessible in the 246, which makes me wonder why we even add it.
Exactly, me too.
But they're telling you that you should, so I know. Because you're tracing the portion of the title that preceded the word or, that's why. But I know.
Okay. There's a question from Jay Simmons. Are the slides available for the webinar to download? And I think they will be available.
They're on there right now. Yep.
Okay, so they're on L2. So
L2 and a PDF. Yep. So why? I hope that was about the alternate
that was about
forms.
the 2.0. There's a Robert asked about why with the Dickens one, why you need all that. And I thought we answered that.
Yeah, I thought so too.
But
it was a short answer, but.
Well, so the reason why is I thought Shelley answered that, saying that
about the indexing.
You don't know how each ILS
is indexing.
Would index.
Yeah.
But okay, there's a question from Jane Z. What is the 5 words or less rule you mentioned?
And that's going back to this hurricanes or tropical cyclones example. It's just when a portion consists of less than 5 words, then you're providing access to both of those portions of the title. So you are doing the 246.30 tropical cyclones, but you're also doing that 246.20 for hurricanes, even though hurricanes is in the 245.10 and that's the first word. But yeah, again, that started some great discussion amongst many of us who had never heard of this less than 5 words rule. Hope that makes sense.
I think a lot of that comes from OCLC's derived searching, the old, 3, 2, 2, 1 for titles, and how searches came up. So maybe that's why bib formats and standards has that example in there.
Maybe. Good questions. And again, if you guys have future topics you want to cover, please type those in the chat box, or when this is over, please fill out the evaluation form that's linked on L2. You have to go under My Events and find it from today's session, and there's a question there about future topics. So we can get a schedule for next year ready to go.
Okay, we can open up the chat for any other cataloging questions you might have, regardless of whether it's about titles or anything else.
But added titles are so exciting.
Yes.
How many times can you say titles?
Also, I did notice one little typo that if you've already printed it, it was on the page where it talked about spine titles, chart book of federal programs and aging. I can't tell you what page number that is because I don't have.
Yeah, I'll look. I think that was farther.
There, you're getting close.
This
Spine
one?
titles.
That
Okay.
one. The very last line should be subfield I, spine title of volume 3. In case you
Oh.
printed it already, just mark
Yeah.
that through.
Instead of subfield A, it should be subfield I,
Oh,
yes.
and the 246.
Yes.
Well, that's the naughty person who cataloged that then. Okay. I'll
Yeah, just put a corrected form of it up.
yeah, I'll correct it and add it, but if you guys have already printed off, then thanks, Shelley. Okay, anybody have any other questions? Added titles or cataloging in general? Or if we missed any questions, please type them again. Well,
I don't think we had any other.
okay, well, if there isn't anything else, remember in January, we've got MARC Fixed Field, and in February, we've got Future of Cataloging coming up. And for the next ones that we'll be doing, we're going to continue doing those on the third Thursday from 10 to 11. So, and again, we'll have a recording of this presentation in a few days. Somebody has to do something with it. That somebody is not me, so we'll let you all know when that's ready. I'll send a link out, and it'll be linked on L2, or no, it'll be on our YouTube channel and a link on L2. Okay. If there aren't any more questions, then thanks for attending. And again, please fill out your evaluation forms. Those are very helpful for all of us. And I guess we'll see you in January. So happy holidays, everybody.
Happy holidays, and I'd like to remind everyone to look in their file cabinets and their closets and their basements for anything about local history, local or genealogy, local authors, anything like that that you can send to the CMC for free cataloging.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, don't forget to